Hello, this is Sean from Gaming and BS. I'm recording this Wednesday, August 16th, 2017. As you may have noticed, we did not drop an episode this week, which would have typically been yesterday, August 15th, on a Tuesday. For the last 140 some odd episodes, we will typically be consistent in dropping an episode Tuesday at noon Central Standard Time, U.S. I wanted to get out an episode, but at the same time, I also wanted to make and speak to why we were unable to get out a show. As some of you know, Brett and I are avid motorcyclists. I've owned many different types. We both had currently own Harley Davidsons and appreciate the open road, the curves, the openness, the air. Everything about motorcycling just captures people like Brett and I. And not only that, is my wife appreciates getting on the back of a motorcycle and relaxing and getting an open view that you don't typically find when you're riding in a vehicle. But unfortunately, on August 12th, Saturday, she and I decided to take a ride, and it did not end well. We were here in Madison, Wisconsin, driving down a pretty busy street. It's a 3-lane, speed limit around 35, 40 miles an hour. A vehicle was in the center lane and opted to take a right turn from the center lane, which was the path that I was traveling with my wife on the back. We were both thrown from the motorcycle. It was a very scary experience, one that I hope nobody has to live through. Without going into a ton of details, it was the other person's fault. They were cited. We were rushed off to the hospital. We both suffered pretty severe injuries, but none that we can't heal from. I am obviously been discharged. I have. And my wife is still in the hospital with a to-be-determined date of her discharge. Her injuries were a little bit more invasive. To just touch on that, she's had her spleen removed, but is in good spirits. Her, I guess, state of being, things being good has been 50-50. Sometimes it's not always that great. But we both have our mental capacities and we'll both survive and heal from the wounds we've incurred. The word of our incident, I guess, has traveled throughout Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. I've gotten emails, messages, instant messages, voicemails. Heck, I even had one of our gamer friends that worked in the hospital come up and see me in my room. The support, well wishes, and offers that have come from you and members of the gaming community have been simply overwhelming. It just leaves me speechless. I've had folks offer to order food and have it delivered to my house, and they're not even in the same state that I live in. I've had individuals offer to cook up dinner and come over and serve it to myself and my wife. I've had individuals wire me money in hopes of that it will help with anything that we have in front of us. It is truly humbling. I think that's why Brett and I think I can speak for Brett when we say that the gaming and tabletop RPG community is one of the best communities in the world. Having said that, we do have a great family support channel. My dad lives across the parking lot from me. My wife's family's local. My mother's in the city. They're helping out as much as they can, which is quite a bit because they both have time, and I'm fortunate in that respect. So, having said that, we don't require a GoFundMe. We are financially okay. Sure, things could take a really crazy turn where medical bills could skyrocket. Insurance coverage may be of a challenge, but I don't anticipate that to happen. I do keep each one of you my thoughts, and I want to express my sincere appreciation for all the gestures each and every one of you have made to help myself and my wife during this period of time. But the show must go on. Gen Con is this week. If you're en route and you get this and you have time to listen to it, whether it's on the way down, maybe you're busy, or on the way back when things are winding down and you notice that this is in your podcatcher all of a sudden, please game your asses off. It's what we love to do. That's what I'll be doing soon enough. And we will get over this. We appreciate, again, everything and all the gestures that have been offered to us. We will see you at the gaming table or over the air, I guess, for lack of better words. Thank you so much. I love you guys. And so here is an episode of Gaming BS, going way back to the beginning. Crappy audio and all. Thank you so much for being not only a part of the Gaming and BS community, but just being a great person.
This is Gaming and BS. 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 BS.
Right. Welcome to the pilot episode of Gaming and BS. I'm Sean.
And I'm Brett. I'm the B in BNS. Heavy in the bull, apparently.
Apparently. And I guess that makes me the...
Well, we don't need to get into that right now.
So, some announcements to start off the show. Obviously, not a whole ton of them since we haven't been around for all that long, being the pilot episode. But we have a website up and running. That's gamingandbs.com. We've got a poll up there. We'll talk a little bit about that later for people to weigh in. And then we've got some sponsors links up there with Brett's Dark Theater. Do you want to talk about Dark Theater briefly, Brett?
Sure, I can do that. Dark Theater is my buddies and I have once the iPad came out, we started looking at stuff we would like to do, how we could use this really cool tablet thing to be a gaming tool, right? So we sat down and said, we're smart dudes. We're all in technology. We can totally do this thing. So we built 2 different applications for it. One of it is Character Folio, which is serves basically your 375 Pathfinder character sheets, as well as Savage Worlds, and 2 specific Savage Worlds incarnations right now. Realms of Cthulhu by lose my brain there. Sean Preston and Reality Blurs. There we go. Sorry about that. And also the Shinetar one that Sean Patrick Fannin has running out there. So that's all cool. And the other app that we just released is our Army Folio, which is for managing your Warhammer Fantasy Battles armies. That one's pretty fresh out there right now. It's doing pretty well. So
that's only Warhammer Fantasy and not 40K.
Correct. 40K is going to be next. We just haven't quite gotten to that yet. The guys I game with, they've really started digging into 40K. They're loving it, and that means I'm going to have an app for it, too, because they won't play without their iPad next to them. So there you go.
So have you played 40K?
I have not. I've actually watched the guys play it. I did the Fantasy Battles thing for a while. Kind of my cup of tea, kind of not. I like the smaller battles, the skirmish-style stuff, and the 40K is a heck of a lot more skirmishy. And from watching those guys play that, I think I might end up getting into that, which will be another huge money sink for me. But hey, what else do I got to spend money on besides a wife and 5 kids? So why not?
Oh, jeez, what faction would you play?
I really like. I mean, it's classic, but I like the Space Marines because I love huge armor and guns and killing Xenos. That's always fun. So I think it'd be Space Marines just because I want to be able to scream for the Emperor really loud every time I attack my foes.
I was going to start getting into that. I had can't remember what it's called, one of the carriers, and then I had I think a rocket squad or jump squad or whatever they call them. So, but I got rid of them because I never really got into I never got a chance. Well, I had chances to play, but I really didn't get into getting a huge army to field or anything. But it's the first time I saw it. I think it was at a local game store here in Madison, and one of the guys was doing a huge tournament, and or literally at least 8 to 10 tables. They even had some of them connected by a bridge, and it was just this huge 40K day that they were doing some tournament. Yeah, it was pretty cool, and some pretty good set features, set pieces that I thought was pretty cool. But yeah, and then over time I got to know a little bit more about how it's quite the investment, and it just never really. I don't know.
One of the other reasons 40K is attractive to me is because it's new to my gaming group, and with the crew I've got, 4 of the guys, Alpha, Beta, and Lenny, and Zave, which are obviously very common names. Those guys all have
all names mothers gave them, right?
Exactly. They all have between them they have every Warhammer Fantasy army out there. I mean, dwarves, every version of Chaos, every version of demons, they have them all and can field probably up to 5,000 points per army, which is a shit ton of figs.
I think what is it, the Imperials? Is it the Imperial Army? It's the regular grunts. I think you have to take almost twice the amount of twice the amount of pieces to field.
Yeah. It's Imperials or whatever the hell they're called. I can't remember offhand, but it's not the Space Marines. It's the regular guys. The guys, if you read Dan Abnett's Gaunt's Ghost stuff from the Warhammer 40K novels, that's those kind of guys, commissars and that type of thing.
I get you.
It's fun.
So we totally digressed. Went totally off a tangent on that.
Damn it.
So anyways, Dark Theater sponsor. Go check out their apps. It's on iTunes. We got links on the website. By all means, I think we've got a link in even Brett's profile that takes you to darktheater.net. And then, so just kind of maybe since this is the pilot, we'll talk a little bit why we're doing it. And I don't even know if I ever asked you, Brett, why you wanted to get in on this podcast thing. So I just pitched it to you because you and I work together.
Yep.
And we talk about gaming pretty often, maybe once a week, and
or more whenever we get it.
Right.
Well, what happens is that Sean and I get together and we'll be like, "Hey, dude, you want to do lunch?" I cut out at 11:30. We get out there early, beat the crowd, head to the cafeteria. We'll sit down and we'll start talking about something like, "Hey, I'm playing this with my group," or "Have you seen this new thing about whatever it is?" And then right in the middle of it, when the network guys will come up and go, "Hey, Brad, I really need your help because this manager is driving me sodding crazy. I need blah, blah, blah." Or somebody from HR comes up, "Hey, Sean, I remember you. Could you help me with, and it's just it's totally wrecks my work by making it about work. So I'd rather So I think for me getting into this was just that opportunity to finally have, a decent discussion with you around some of these topics and not have to worry about getting tagged by somebody from the office every 5 minutes for something else that is crap I don't care about, really.
Yeah, so we talk enough about gaming, so I might as well just record it and put it out there for the masses. It'll, some of the topics I think will probably cross over, and that's what my fear is. I listen to a bunch of podcasts of gaming, and I hope I don't, just copy or take from what they are, but I think, we'll see. We're just two guys BSing about gaming and random other stuff that comes to mind. So why don't we go into what we call Random Encounter? And Random Encounter is just kind of a piece of the show where we talk about anything that comes to mind. We just kind of put out there quickly. It's not the main topic, but just something that Brett may have been thinking of or myself. And so I don't know if you have one for this week, but so yesterday, I don't know if I told you. So currently in an FFG game with some guys that I've grown up with and known for over 30 years.
FFG stands for?
Fantasy Flight Games. Star Wars RPG. Yep. And so the GM, my buddy, couldn't show up. And so I wanted a game, and I said, well, we've got a couple different options I threw out in front of the folks that could show up. One was to play D&D 5e or just D&D current iteration. And I could run that, and there's pre-gens in the starter kit, and I was just going to run that. Or make characters, and if we had time, get into it. Or maybe do like Savage Worlds, just as a different system for those folks. So they decided, we'll make up characters. And we did, okay, fine.
5e, and that's Savage?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, 5th edition D&D. We didn't get to play that night. So yesterday morning, had some free time, got together with, 4 players. Yeah. Had 4 players, and I only had like 2 hours to get into it. So I'm like, oh, that's fine. We can get through one encounter, and taking them through the mines of Phandelver. And I think that's what it's called, Phandelver. And so what happened was we started.
Is that a pre-gen adventure or something in the set, or?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
It's so it comes with a starter box. So if you buy the starter box,
okay.
You get a set of dice, you get the basic rules, and you get a module. And that module or that pre-made adventure is the Mines of Phandelver. I think it takes you from levels 1 to 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And so I've gone through the first part as a player at one of the local game stores, a group. I joined, went through the first encounter. So I thought, I have enough as a player, and I could run this pretty quickly, and I read most of it. And so we started playing it. We got the characters and started going. And then during combat, there's a combat that broke out. Go figure. And
shocking.
I know, right?
D&D, someone drew a sword. Oh my God.
Yeah. And it was your typical ambush kind of scenario. I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but nonetheless, there was a point where we had the initiative order, and one of the guys was like, I said, okay, what are you going to do? And I'm GMing. What are you going to do? And the guy's like, well, I'm asking her a question, and her is referring to a buddy of mine's spouse who plays with us. And she was playing a dwarven fighter, and she's kind of like after him in the initiative. And she's kind of like, well, I'm not sure. I might do this. I might do that. And I said, hey, and for whatever reason, I think it was just kind of building up because I was kind of getting irked at their inability to just do something.
So is the analysis paralysis thing like we talk about in the corporate world, right? Where you sit there and you talk about it, like, friggin' do something.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, it's kind of, you got to have to refrain yourself because it's a new system. Nobody knows how to play. They don't know the rules. But it's not so revolutionary. I mean, we're not playing Fate, right? Something completely different. And so, they've played Pathfinder.
But at a certain point, you've got to be able to step up and say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to try this thing. It's a character in a brand new game. So what the hell? Let's attack somebody and just see how that works. Right.
Well, but the thing that got me was I'm like, hey, no metagaming. And he said, and I'm kind of all over on this, but at the beginning, I really wanted to kind of set the tone and get some backgrounds, because backgrounds in the new iteration of D&D is pretty intensive. I heard somebody actually quote there was, and I haven't counted them, but I heard there were like 20 pages in the PHB dedicated to backgrounds.
Depth of character.
And there's literally like 2 pages dedicated to like combat.
So instead of I am Fytor from Fytor land, my parents were killed by orcs, and guess what I'm going to do?
Right.
You actually have a real person. Okay.
So even at the beginning, I'm like, hey, how do you know this person? How do you know him? How do you know her? How long have you known each other? And so we kind of established that. And the reason I say this is because when he was trying to determine what the dwarf in the party was going to do, dwarf Fytor, was going to do during their move, I said, hey, whoa, time out, no metagaming. What are you going to do? This is the scene. You've got 2 enemies to the front of you. You've got the fighter in front of you. You're about 15 feet. We're not using miniatures. We're doing theater of the mind. Of course, that stumped him and kind of tripped him up at one point. I don't know how far away I am. I don't know how far I got to be. I don't understand. Where is everything? And I'm like, just ask. Let me know. And I kind of paint the picture. And at one point, I just kind of snapped. I'm like, no metagaming. That's not the game I want to play. If it's a game you want to play, just let me know. This is just not the game. And so afterwards, I kind of laughed. And I said it in such a way where like everybody was, there was this quietness that fell over the game.
Kind of like the boss came in and said, hey, no talking.
Right.
Get back to work. Quit chatting in the cubes. Everyone goes, oh, shit, I'll go back and work.
Yeah.
You suck the fun right off the table.
Totally. So I felt bad, and I later ended up apologizing and say, look, I think I owe an apology to everybody, and this is why. But at the same time, this is the type of game that I'm looking to facilitate. And, he came back and said that he felt, he was going to apologize, and I beat him to it. But the short of it is that he admits that he is more of an analytical guy, that he is more crunchy, rules lawyery, which is the rules lawyer I don't have a problem with, as a matter of fact, because I'm not rules heavy, so I don't mind a guy at the table or gal at the table that can whip up the rule quick and just make it quick and tell everybody what it means or what's going to happen. But anyways, that's my random encounter, and I think everything will be fine moving forward, but I don't know if it's from... I mean, we may turn this into the whole topic, but I don't want to because we've got other things to talk about. But
Well, I'll tell you what, though, dude, just the fact that you had something and you kind of went, oh, crap, and we're socially aware enough, which unfortunately a number of us at some point in our gaming career are not, but you're able to be aware enough to say, wow, I just slapped my gamers, so I need to say, hey, I'm sorry. And instead of waiting for them to say, yeah, I guess I'm not doing the right thing, when you're running it, I've had that before where I was running a game and I looked at my crew and said, yeah, I bollocks that one up pretty bad. You guys are all pretty pissed off, and quite honestly, you have a right to be because, it just isn't going right. So that's cool, in my opinion, that you did that, and then you can at least come back together and say, okay, I want to do this thing. What do you want to do? Can we find common ground on this? That's a big boy thing to do, jokingly, but it's not easy, in these environments to do that thing, to stop them and say, all right, yeah, I'm sorry. Here's what we could do to make it better. Can you guys work with me? And it's cool that they were actually big boy enough and lady enough to be able to step up and talk back to you and say, yeah, I'm with you. I'm sorry too. And here's something we can do to make it better together in this great social thing that we're trying to accomplish. So that's cool.
Yeah. So that was something that came up yesterday, but anyways, let's get into, you guys can drop us an email if you want to talk a little bit more about some of the things that might have come up as far as metagaming goes, and we'll make it like maybe a show topic in the near future.
Well, I think it's definitely something we should talk about.
Oh, it drives me crazy. And I mean, yeah, it's a whole definitely another show. So what do we
honestly, though, I was going to say it bleeds right into what we were going to chat about when we're talking about narrative control. Because this is something that Sean and I started talking about the other day over lunch when we found a quiet place in the cafeteria where no one would bother us. And we were talking about the Star Wars game he's got going on and the way the dice work in that system and how you roll the die and then there's different ways to interpolate, read the dice, figure out what they're supposed to say. And some of that control is on the game master side and some of it could conceivably be on the player side. And what you were telling me just now with the random component from before is that if you don't have an understanding of what you each want across, all the different people at the table plus the game master. If you don't get what you're trying to accomplish, what each one of you wants to get out of it, the old social contract concept, then you're not going to have the trust when those dice hit the table that, hey, because if I remember your explanation correctly, I've not played the game, but you could fail. Excuse me, you could fail in a good way, succeed in a bad way, the way the dice were all just to give that component of it. And if the game master is very black and white, it's either good or bad, and there's hard to get the shades of gray, and you can't go back and forth with them, then you're going to be in that position where you have to look at it and go, is this the type of game I want? Is the story I want to play? Is this the type of thing I want to do? Is this fun for me? If the only thing that happens is either hit the orc or I don't hit the orc, even though the dice, in your opinion, clearly state I could hit the orc but with a glancing blow, or I miss him but set myself up for a +1 on the next hit or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, let me think about this. I mean, there's a number of game systems that I've run that don't have any rule for that at all. But the guys I've been gaming with, and just from a background perspective for folks, the group I'm gaming with, I've been with the bulk of them, about 5 of those guys, for over 20 years. So there's a lot of stuff that we're like, we just do because that's how we do it. And we didn't have a system that had die interpretations like that. You just would come up close, right? Somebody would roll a 19 when it was supposed to be a 20 and was really close. And one of us who was ever running just kind of give it a little edge just because it felt like it was something you should do, and went back and forth like that. So I've never played one with a mechanic that said, if you do this, these are the type of options you have in front of you. So I think I need to. I think it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a unique game for sure, and I do think that a lot of it has to do with you mentioned snare and social contract briefly, and I think even then there's a lot of the RPGs that could benefit from a social contract, and sometimes it's inherent, and sometimes it's you got to flesh it out and set the expectations and actually bring it up as a topic and talk about with the group. And I think with, it's funny, I have the same type of setup that you do, right? I've got the group that I've played with for 30 years, and we got together and learned how to play RPGs together. And whether some of us have evolved more because of our exposure to different games or what the case is, that may be what I'm experiencing. Like, I don't want to play the same way we've played maybe for 10 years. Maybe I want to play a little bit differently, and this is why and how. But I've also had the groups where, I don't know not any of the players. I've maybe known 2 of the players for a couple years, but very casual, not seeing them very often and interacting them with very often. And then maybe 2 new people that I've never met before and getting that dynamic down. And it's funny how it kind of falls together a little bit. But, sometimes you have to sit down and say, hey, this is, if you want crunchy, very tactical, it's, not the way we roll. Or if you want really heavy role playing and one of the guys at the table wants to do a tactical heavy and that's not out there and spoken, somebody's going to not be happy in the whole scheme of things. But,
well, I think with a system like the one you talked about, with the multiple dice, if I remember correctly, these are like different shapes and colors and different pictographs on them and such, right?
Yeah. So we're talking about Fantasy Flight's new Star Wars game.
Star Wars game.
Yeah.
Edge of the Empire, is it?
Edge of the Empire. There's Age of the Rebellion, and then they came out with the Force one, Fate and Destiny, I think it's called. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say in the way that is laid out, at least my understanding of it, again, I have not played it, so my apologies if somebody is going to correct me on this, but when you have a system that's designed to have interpretations on dice in order to have more than – it's supposed to create something interesting that doesn't always translate to you either hit and you did double damage or you missed and you chopped your own hand off. If it's supposed to be open up for that, and if the system explains that, when you read the game, this is kind of where system does matter to a point, in that, at least to me anyway, when you read the rules, you feel how it's supposed to go, and the spirit of that system and the rules, the spirit of it is, you know what, we're supposed to get really descriptive here, and it should be more than just you really hit or you really missed. There can be just a bit of narration around it, like, hey, yeah, you did it and you tripped, or something happened, you slid on a glass bottle, or you knocked over a chair or something, because that then leads sometimes to another step within the narration to make the encounter more fun, where that you end up grabbing the chair in the next round and slapping a guy with it while you pick up your lightsaber if it fell out of your hand, or whatever the case may be. An improvisational weapon, or just changes the entire room layout a little bit, because having that short description of you and I back and forth, and you tell me, hey, you slide into the table because you tripped, and I'm like, well, the dishes obviously go flying. We may not even known there were dishes there, but dishes imply forks and knives and glass and possibly other cutlery and platters. Next thing you know, people are throwing saucers and other crap all over the room and just making it this wacky thing that could happen, as opposed to you hit the table and you lose your attack because you're off balance. That's pretty boring. If you as a player are trying to drive the more fun, extra expressive narrative, and the DM has no desire to do that, then you're on two opposite ends of that system spectrum, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even one example you and I were talking about the other day was walking into a room and doing a search check. And, in some games I've run games that are a little more tactical, and somebody walks into a room and roses a 20-sider, adds their skill, and says, what do I see? And then if you talk to some of the folks that play some of the older games, and some of the folks that play some of the older games, they'll walk into a room and say, okay, what do I see? So then there's a dialogue that begins between the DM or GM and the player. What do I see? Okay, there's a bed.
The OSR.
Yeah, it tends to be with the old school Renaissance guys that do play the old red box, swords and wizardry, and some of those Ozrics. There's a plethora of them, but it's rulings over rules is their kind of mantra. But they'll go into a room, and there isn't necessarily a quote unquote skill for looking in the room, right? But you have to kind of tell the DM or GM that what you're doing, where you're looking, and then that information's divulged. How in depth are you looking? Are you going to spend a lot of time, or it's going to be a short amount of time? If there's a bed, do you flip the bed? Do you rip apart the mattress? All kinds of different things you can get into, and there's so narrative control in that space. The player's helping out in that, and the more details they get into. But with the Star Wars Fantasy Flight game, there's like you mentioned, you can fail and you can have an advantage, right? So if you don't get enough successes and you have enough failures, whatever you're trying to do actually fails. But you can still have enough results that give you an advantage or a threat. So you get this weird dynamic, which is what you kind of touched on. And so the GM will try to kind of narrate that and facilitate what happens. But there are also GMs out there that allow the player to kind of determine. And then if it's too much, maybe it's over the top. Maybe it gives, you have one advantage, and what you're really narrating is something that maybe equate to three advantages. The GM could step in and kind of mitigate that a little bit.
Now, does this system tell you one way or the other is the preferred method? Like, hey, you should let the players do. Does it infer the players should have a hand in this, or it should be a back and forth? How strong is that inference if it's out there?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't think it actually does. I don't have my book in front of me, but I don't think it spells it out necessarily. I'm on the webpage that kind of talks about the die mechanics.
Okay.
And it stipulates, the core mechanic is a skill check, and at times the GM will have the characters roll pools of dice to determine whether their actions succeed or fail. And then whenever you roll a skill check, you compare a pool of positive dice and their results against the results of a pool of negative dice, right? So it's, you're comparing the pluses and minuses, right? So positive dice help you accomplish the task or achieve beneficial side effects, and then these dice may reflect his innate talents or abilities, special training, superior resources, or other advantages that you can apply to the specific task. Negative dice represent the forces that would hinder or disrupt you, such as the inherent difficulty of the task, obstacles, additional risk, and the efforts of another character to thwart the task. But it doesn't truly memorable sequence.
I was going to say, even if it doesn't itself do that, I mean, that's to the thing we kind of kicked off with is the concept of how much I want to do this is the trust between the players and and your game master, right? So if your game master for the Star Wars game only wants to be the one to say this is what happens because I just kind of, this is a harsh phrase, but I dictate all the activities based on the die rolls. I am the sole interpreter of that. And if you have a really cool idea that you think you'd like to posit, saying, hey, this should be really cool, it's still a failure, but I'd like to have this advantage. Like, I'm trying to fight past this dude anyway to get to the door. I don't hit him, but I do slide 2 feet across the floor towards the door because I tripped. Okay, yeah, why not? Just to give you a slight edge. And if the game master's like, no, I'm sorry, that's not at all what I'm going to do. It has to be this totally other thing. And if what you're trying to do is to make it more interesting and more fun, and not just for you, right? If you do it, in my opinion, if you're doing it right, then it's fun for everybody at the table. Like, ooh, that's really cool, and that sounds like something I want to be a part of. And that type of narration is a good time and makes for a great story in that particular encounter. Then I don't know why, as a game master, you wouldn't want to hear that and go, hey, that's an even better idea. Let's rewind the clock for a second and throw Sean's narrative in there instead of Brett's, because Sean's was way more sexy than what I had. We're going to go with the slide across the floor 2 feet closer to the door, because next round, boom, he shuts the door and the bad guy can't escape.
Yeah, and yes. And so there is also like a mechanic where you can actually kind of pay that forward. So if you I believe, and I apologize, I'm going to drive some of the Star Wars FFG guys probably nuts, but there is the ability where you get advantages, I believe, and then you can actually give. So you don't have to necessarily take advantage of that yourself, but what you can do is you can add what's called a boost die to the next player.
So I could screw up, just theoretically speaking, my bad guy's trying to escape out the door behind him. I'm trying to stop him. My friends are also trying to do something else. In this process, I give them the 2 extra seconds they need to close the pod bay doors, or whatever the case may be.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So I could take my advantage and basically pitch it to the other guy and say, here, you take a hold of this thing. I failed this, thing I tried to do, but hey, fortunately, my absolute clumsiness with my blaster helped you get your thing done on the side, because if nothing else, the bad guy thinks, wow, this guy's a moron, and is busy paying attention to me.
So you would have a failure. So in your kind of scenario, you would have a failure, but you would have an advantage. So instead of you taking advantage of the advantage, that sounds ridiculous. If you don't want to take that advantage yourself, right?
You pass it off.
Yeah, you pass it off, but it's not a hard and fast. It's just a die. You give the die to the next person that is in line in the initiative order, and they can use that to help them what they're accomplishing. Whether it even relates to it should relate to your actions because it's your advantage.
And hence the narration that you could throw out saying, how the hell would we have this work? Well, why not? Here's how it could work.
Right. Yeah.
See, I honestly think that, in my opinion, that end of it, making that narration fun, is where I think you really need more of the player input than the game master input. Because if you're failing but succeeding, how do you as a player envision that? What would you deem as a failure yet a success? On my side, success plus a success would pretty simple, and if I fail and succeed as the bad guy, I would be like, well, this is what would make sense for my environment, so I'm going to fail and succeed in this way, and if you do that, because it's a gray, fuzzy, it's success but not success, and how would you measure that? It's your die roll, it's your character and your group that this thing's occurring to. What would be successful to you? And if you go completely way the hell off somewhere that I think is just stupid. I'm going to say, no, that's a bit much. Why don't we tone that back? And, you cut off his toe and not his whole leg at the hip or whatever, or some variation on a theme. It's just not, you don't get the whole enchilada. You only get part of the enchilada.
Well, that's the biggest challenge on forums. And when people talk about the new system, like even, when they go from one system to this one, it's hard for people to kind of get their head wrapped around what that is. And so to kind of make sure that we're on the same page, there's success and failure, and then there's advantages and threats.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So when you say I could fail, but yet have 2-3 advantages or 1 advantage, or I can succeed and still have 3 threats or 2 threats or 1 threat, or you can succeed and all advantages. So like everything's blowing your way. So I just want to make sure that's clear, because sometimes it can get confusing when you talk about I succeed, but I have so many failures.
Is this oh, sorry, go ahead.
Because failures actually offset successes and vice versa.
Okay. In the old White Wolf system, the original World of Darkness, which I ran for God knows how long, like 15, 20 years practically for my group, you used to be able to do it was the successes, the 10s and the 1s. 1s would cancel successes, and 10s you could re-roll in certain occasions and so on. So it was kind of it's a die pool mechanic, and it's pretty – that success and failure is pretty obvious right there. You rolled all the dice because you're a player. For your character, you rolled them all, and you say, wow, I had 10 successes, but I also have these, because you could get a big salad bowl full of 10-siders at some point, believe me. And you had 10 successes and 5 1s. Well, okay, trim it down. Now I've only got 5 successes. So knowing how you started with this wad of success, and you could say, well, I chipped it away down to just a couple threads. So the player took part in whittling away his own success as big as it could have been, and seeing, wow, it really did get trimmed down through to all this obnoxious failure that happened in the process. So at least with my group and I, it felt pretty kind of natural just to be able to say, well, yeah, boy, I just, by the skin of my teeth, I leaped across from building to building in the alley, just barely grabbed onto the fire escape. When the rule may state that, 1 success is good. I mean, that's all you need. You only need 1 8 or higher. But when you whittled it away from 5 8s and up down to 1, you really felt like you just kind of got it.
Yeah.
But in this case, now I guess to finish my thought on that though, we got there by going slowly through it the first couple of times, because it was a totally different mechanic for a lot of the guys that played, especially for me running with them, was how are we going to interpret this stuff? What's it going to work? And we read the rules, looked at it, said, well, I think this makes sense. Does that make sense? We went back and reviewed it and go, yeah, I think it does. We'll go with that. It's in the spirit of the rules, so we'll keep going with it. So I guess long way around to ask a question is this the first time that you and this team have played, or this group have played, this version of the Star Wars system?
Yeah, the game's been, I think it's been around like a couple years now, and it's the first time any of us have played. So yeah, it's new. And I listened to a couple podcasts. There's a big one out there that talks about it's wholly dedicated to Star Wars role-playing games, and they happen to be, because this one's the latest iteration, is the one that you're talking about the most. So shout out to Order 66 and those guys over at D20 Radio. But it's a good podcast that talks about a lot of these issues, and so a lot of that, the advice on how to handle those things come from them, but they get a lot of inquiries on why. And in one of the segments that they actually say, okay, you roll, and you get, whenever your failures outweigh your successes, you fail. Whenever your successes outweigh your failures, you succeed, even if it's 1. So whatever you want to do is based on that. The advantages and threats are based on any of the extra symbols that may or may not come up. So they do actually, there was one episode that they did that talked about, okay, you roll this. And then they would say, you have to come up with, and they'd have 3 guys on the show, and they would say, okay, I'm going to come up with the die roll. You guys tell me how you would adjudicate that. And they'd say, okay, 2 failures, success, and 3 advantages. And they'd go, okay. And then they would just kind of talk about what they would come up with. But, when you don't play it enough and you're not getting into that, or even if you just don't know or you don't have any of those examples, it can be rather difficult.
Let's take it. Let me stop for a second. If we take a step back and think old school OSR, AD&D, D&D, some of the older stuff. We mentioned a number of minutes ago was around I walk into a room and I search. The narrative old school system was like, look, there's no I rolled to search like in Pathfinder or any of the other variations on that theme. You would say, what do you do as the DM? What do you do, Sean? And Sean would say, yes. We mentioned the table. I'm going to look underneath the table, and the DM says, the whatever it is, the green slime jumps out and eats your head. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Remember when I look under table, I always prod with my dagger. You're like, oh, yeah, that's right. You said you always do your dagger. Or you have the back and forth bitching about whether you always use your dagger or not. And I think
I always love those incidents, too.
That's fun.
You're going to get my blood boiling on those. You didn't say that. Well, I always do. I always tell you I do this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we could talk about that particular piece of hell later on, but in this case though, there's no system, right? There's no die that says I remembered my dagger, therefore I did this, and the green slime didn't eat my head. It was a narrative argument back and forth. So I think what's freaking some people out with this, and again, and as we've gone on Brett's experience, is that when you have dice and you roll them, you're like, aha, this is supposed to be an empirical thing. There's a freaking chart and a thing, and it says if I get 6 or better, I have a blah, and it's this and a that. And I fail, and there's one of these. It's squishy. I roll dice, and squishiness occurs. This is weird. I'm supposed to roll a die, and if I beat the target of 6, how come I don't get it? Well, you roll the pink. What the hell does pink mean? Right. Well, it's a die mechanic that's narrative, and I think that's kind of freaky to some gamer DNA, because you're used to when I roll a die, that means the talking stops and the empirical data comes. And you roll dice, and the talking just keeps going, and there's no empirical data. What the hell's going on?
Yeah.
That's what it feels like. Again, I haven't played it, and I haven't read it, so going on what you're saying and how that would interpret to me and my experiences with other similar games that have, a die roll that kind of leads to squishiness, or like with Savage Worlds to me with like the bennies and stuff. Hey, you do this? No, you don't. Yes, I do. Kind of the poker thing. You can get going back and forth throwing bennies, or with fate, fate points. And when you do that, it's kind of cool, but I think it freaks some people out when you go from tokens and things that aren't dice to actual dice, roll it, and you're like, wow, there's no numbers on the damn thing. There's shields and arrows and boxes, and there's nothing that says you beat the target, therefore you get everything you wanted and more. It's just like, hey, what did you get? I don't know. You tell me. No, you tell me. I think that throws people for a loop. But you gotta have that back and forth though with the crew, where you decide, like at the very beginning, you're like, hey, I'm sorry, I wanted to do this. I really laid it out, kind of hit you with the hammer, saying no metagaming. God damn it! And they're like, well, we always metagame. I thought that was okay. And if they feel surprised, they're going to be, nose out of joint, angry. And for this type of thing, you get together and go, well, okay, Billy the DM says, no, all the die rolls, all squishiness is decided by me and nobody else. Well, had you told me that, Billy, at the beginning, we could have cut out a lot of the heartache, or we could have had this argument up front and try to figure out a squishy gray area when we could actually push you a little bit, or what would be okay? How could I help you get past the narrative? Because what if I don't like what you did to me? Type of thing.
Yeah, the narrative part, that's what it's all about, right? That's the conundrum. And I think what kind of sucks and what kind of irks me, I think, is over the years, and I don't know if it's the D20. Like, I don't want to put my finger exactly on that system. And I know so many people are like, why not? Go ahead, do it. Put your finger on that system, because that's the problem. But I don't
damn
know.
The system. Damn the man.
I don't know if the narrative pieces of RPGs, and not all of them, obviously, because some of them are so narrative intensive, and usually they're some of the independent published stuff. But, I don't know if I could sit down with my group and I go, there's one group I game with up until a few weeks ago, for the last couple of years where, if we played Red Box, it's a whole different ball game. There is, I think a lot of them, they'd walk into a room and not even know what to do because they wouldn't know how to freaking narrate themselves in the room. They wouldn't know how to kind of say, take that narrative control. Dice or no dice.
It's kind of weird to me because unless you have a group of people two thoughts. One, there's probably a reason why the other system is the best-selling system out there. There's more people that play like that. I would assume you buy shit that you like that plays the way you want it to. At least that's what I try to do. If I want to play certain types of things, I've got Amber, I've got a crap ton of different systems to do different things with. But it kind of shocks me when people, I've been gaming for 20 years. I've been gaming since I was in third grade, and I'm 41 now, so it's been a while. How do you have no memory of what you did with your friends in high school when you argued about, I always use a dagger to check under tables. I freaking told you that, Sean. How did you lose that memory and not go, oh, yeah, I remember how to do that? To me, it's like riding a bike. I stepped away from it. I ran an OSR game for my crew a while back. Oh, my God, this is awesome. I'm sick of the freaking die roll for everything, die roll for this, die roll for that. I just want to talk about it. I want to describe it. So they totally got off on it.
I think some of them have lost it over the years because we just get old and we can't remember yesterday. I think we're all old farts and can't.
That is possible.
I can't remember how we used to play. Johnny, help me remember. But it's either
my memory juice.
I don't think, honestly, I think I was talking to somebody the other day. It was you probably. And saying, I don't know if I'd ever want to play the way we did when we were younger. We probably played like doorknobs because we were 13.
Well, there's a difference from how do we do this, right? Because we're talking about the way we play. But there's an approach to the way you play, right? Like being a total 13-year-old dickhead who just is trying to get even with the DM because he broke your sword. Or that rust monster totally shouldn't have hit me 5 times. He destroyed my magic plate mail. I'm going to get him back. That type of crap we don't like anymore usually. Or at least usually, I hope. But there was kind of cherry picking, if you will, back and looking at the narrative components. We should be, I would hope, better narrative players now than I would have been when I was 10 or 8 or whatever it was when I started.
Yeah, you'd think so.
When I game, there's in my hometown of Wausau, there's the high school I went to has a game club. And I've run a couple different games for them and at their little EverCon, which they run every January, which is a lot of fun. And it's all kids. High school and junior high level kids. And I've played Pathfinder for them, Call of Cthulhu stuff, and Osric. And they approach them all the same. They could give a crap what the rules say. They want to tell me what I'm going to do. They say, Brett, here's what my character does this. I do this. I attack this thing. I want to flip over the table. I want to use this I want to do a ninja roll. I had one kid who's playing a big, ugly, half-orc Pathfinder system. He did not know his freaking character sheet, didn't care to. I want to do a ninja roll. What do I have to roll? That's all he asked me. That's all he cared for.
Yeah.
I want to do this cool narrative thing. Give me something to make it happen. Where it would get squishy and probably terrifying for him. But I said, okay, Justin, which is the kid's name, go for it. And he rolls these 3 funky dice, different shapes, colors, different symbols on it. And they go, you have 1 success, 1 failure, and another success. That means you have to fail slightly. He'd look at me like, what the you mean fail slightly? I either do it or I don't, right?
Yeah.
So that black and white thinking is there, that if I roll a 14, I have it. And if the dice aren't the final arbiter of success and failure, why the hell am I rolling them? That's that's what it would hit him. Based on, again, playing with those high school and junior high kids, they're like, well, if the dice aren't the final arbiter of this, it's what the hell am I rolling these dice for?
Well, I think that's the big issue is like the degrees of success are usually not incorporated into a lot of RPGs, even the old school ones. So it's just,
nope.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's do I do it? Is it cool? Can I do it? Yeah, I think that's the big issue, which is something new, and some people appreciate it, and some probably won't be able to wrap their head around it. And it's fine. It's all dependent on how you want to play, right?
Yep, exactly. What you want to play, what your crew wants to do. I've had guys that would, back when I was running Vampire all the time, would be like, hey, we're playing Vampire. Like, I want to run a mummy and a mage and this. Like, nope, sorry, not in this game. then they get a little cheesed off. Like, no, I really want to do this thing. Well, too bad. That's not what we're doing. So they got to go find something else. The hard thing is when you're with one group of guys, you're like, look, I really want to run some crazy space opera / transhuman / other thing with a GURPS hack of Savage Worlds or something equally weird sounding. And everyone in your group's like, why would you do that? That sounds stupid. I don't like that, or whatever it is. Social contract perspective, right? You got to find something that everybody's going to enjoy, at least on some level. And if you're playing a game where one of the core pieces of it is squishy die interpretations, where you argue narrative control back and forth, and most of the people at the table don't get into that, you're going to have a really shitty time.
Yeah.
Not that you're having a really shitty time. I'm sorry. I'm not inferring you're having a really shitty time with that, but I could see where that would be frustrating at the very least.
Right. So that's a narrative control. What else do we have to say about that? Or have you vetted that?
I think when it comes to die interpretations, I think I have a thing, and I vacillate on this, is with the and I touched on Fate and Savage Worlds, and I kind of hate Fate points, and I kind of don't like bennies. And I know a lot of guys love that stuff. I met a lot of men and women at Gen Con stuff that really love it. I played Savage Worlds a number of times. I've always had a good time. I've never not had fun playing, right? It's been fun. But there's something really wonky to me, and this probably comes to playing with the same group of guys, men and women, for 20 years, is that I don't need a system for Lenny or Alpha to tell me I take control of the scene. They just do it, and it makes sense for us, and they just go ahead. And it happens. It's a natural thing that my group does. So when I read a system like that, I think it's a gimmick. Probably a topic for a totally different podcast, but it feels like a gimmick to me. And I know it's not supposed to feel like a gimmick, and that's where I need to, like I said, try to take a step back and go, okay, is it a tool for other people? Does it help other groups play better or more like I do? I don't know. Like I said, if I talk about it in my head, it doesn't sound as arrogant as when it comes out of my mouth.
And just realizing that is half the battle.
I think it might be. Just kind of, sometimes you have to apologize to your team. Like, look, guys, I'm really sorry. So if anybody out there loves that stuff, I'm really sorry. I'm not trying to be arrogant. I just, like I said, when my group naturally does certain things, and like narrative control, if I were to play the Star Wars system, roll the dice, and we need a squishy die interpretation, it'd be a 2-minute conversation. We'd all have something everybody liked, and we'd be off and running. People would be chipping in back and forth for each other. Alpha would roll this weird thing that could go either way. Lenny will argue with me. Beta and Zave and JR would step in. Like, oh, this is what it is. That totally makes sense. Off we go. Everybody can, consensus in about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, done, boom, off you go. Because everyone wants to keep it rolling.
Yeah.
So, but again, that's 20 years of, brotherhood and sisterhood packed into one crew. It's a hell of a lot easier to say I know what this person's thinking because I've been in this spot with them many, many times.
Yeah. So I think even so with the spirit of FFG and the Star Wars that they're doing, I mean, perfect examples if you were to really flesh that out is when the Han Solo guy. So we'll wrap this up in a second, but the Age of Rebellion, not the Age of Rebellion, sorry, Edge of the Empire. That version is when you're playing all bunch of fringers on the outer core, and you're kind of like the ragtag band of good-hearted guys probably working with the criminal underground. You're playing fringe characters. And so really the first guy that comes to mind is the Han Solo guy, right? And
yep.
So when you talk about the die mechanics in the game and facilitating that and rolling it over into the narrative, the examples that you can actually apply from the movies many of them come from Han Solo. And the perfect one is when in Return of the Jedi, he is walking around on Endor, and he's going to sneak up on the stormtrooper guy, and he steps and he rolls, right? He's going to step up and sneak up on this guy, and then he's going to punch him in the face and subdue him, right?
Yep.
So as he's sneaking up, he rolls the dice, and he fails he succeeds, but with a threat. So what happens is he steps on the stick. The stormtrooper turns around, And
Snap, what the hell?
Yep, exactly. And then he punches him.
Yep.
Right. So it's those kinds of different things that, Han Solo is, even when he's trying to get, they jump out of the asteroid belt. They got the big Imperial ships coming after him. He's going to make the jump to light speed.
Well, think about they're coming in on the A-wing, right? And he says, just kind of whatever. And Chewie, brr at him. And he goes, I don't know, just fly casual.
Right.
The whole thing, they get through, but it's an older code, sir, but it does check out. I mean, that whole thing is, from that mechanic perspective, is a success with threats, on it. You've got Vader going, aha, my attention's been drawn. This causes this, blah, 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 blah. Boom, you roll the dice with all those modifiers. You get in, but guess what? The Empire knows you're here.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just
exactly,
how it goes.
Exactly. And as a matter of fact, that's a good example because when you do that's a very, very good example because what happens is you can actually roll and you can succeed and have 3 threats. And what happens is those threats don't have to come to fruition right there, then and there. However, as a GM, you should be applying them to that encounter, right? You're as a GM, you're not banking the threats to whip something out of your butt later in the adventure. But going to what you were saying, hey, fly casual, they succeeded in going through, but they know that it's not, they're BSing. They know.
Yeah, it's not legit.
Right. And then what happens is as that plays out later when they go after them and realize that they're on the planet or the moon. And yeah, that's a good example too. So in this, are we pretty much wrapped up on this one?
I think so. The last time, of course, I always have one more thing, as I always do. One of the interesting is when you compare gaming to a movie or to a book or whatever it is. And I know in the movie it's a script, right? So it's definitely preset once the actor's doing something. And, when you're writing it initially, the author will say, well, I wasn't really sure what was going to happen, this, that, the other thing. But in the game, when it's life and death, right? And it can mean the immediate stop of fun for somebody. Your character got shot in the face or something horrible happened. Then that whole die interpretation thing, I think, gets even stickier with certain players and certain game masters because if you're a let the dice fall where they may kind of dude, and you hit, you go, sorry, you're shot in the face, your head explodes. But I had this. Yeah, at least your brains don't splatter on your partner.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's not as cool as Han Solo, sneaking up, cracking a stick, or flying casual and actually getting in, but Vader still knows you're here, and because that's gonna work. None of those people are actually gonna die. But if you were to take that and apply it to a Firefly scenario within the Serenity movie, at the very end, I'm going to spoiler time, right? So Wash is coming in. Have you seen this?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Wash is flying in, a leaf in the wind, freaking craziness going all over the place. They land, looks over at his wife or whomever, goes, wow, this is great, and shock. He gets stuck right through the chest, and he freaking dies because it's a horrible, and from a system perspective, he succeeded, but he had so goddamn many negative threats that guess what? You're dead. So I think sometimes we tend to look at it from the shiny Star Wars lens, right? If we're going to compare the two.
Sure.
One doesn't have major characters don't die. Bad guys die. Even Vader, he doesn't force choke anybody who really matters. He just kills Captain Nita or whomever it is, and Stalin promotes the next guy. Where in Firefly and Serenity, freaking Preacher gets killed because you did something, and then guess what? They show up and blow the hell out of everybody. Oh yeah, and Wash dies too. In one movie, 2 of the main characters that you lived and loved are dead. And that's, and I think, but again, then as a player, you've got to be willing to accept that and say, well, you know what, narratively speaking, that was sexy, that was cool, and I died for a really good narration. I'm awesome. That's awesome. I'll live with that. Not everybody's willing to do it.
No, that's true. Absolutely.
I'll shut up about that now. Maybe.
So, do we want to go into die roll?
I think we should. If nothing else, we got to get to the end of this thing at some point.
Die roll is something that we came up with. That's basically 2 to 5 things that Brett and I come up with that just may be neat, something to check out, something we've seen, take notice, but it's more just in brief, nothing elaborate. So, do you have yours ready to go?
I think I do. Let me see here. Where's my little list of stuff? Yep. Okay. So you want me to start, or do you want to start?
Go ahead.
Oh, come on. Start the last one. You start this
I'll
one.
Start. I'll
You start.
I'll go start. So starting off, Gamehole Con November. It's a local convention here in Madison, Wisconsin. If you guys are interested in coming, it's gameholecon.com is the web address. I think event submissions are coming to a close, which is ironic because they let it go even past when their event. So they don't close event submission when people can actually sign up for events. So there's still you could still submit an event. You could still get a badge and sign up for events that haven't been all locked up and done. I'll be there. I'll be running Dungeon Crawl Classics as well as a Savage World Ghostbusters game on Saturday night. So check that out if you can. I got a shirt that number 2 on my die roll list. I had a shirt that I posted on Google Plus. And I'll put the link in the show notes. That got quite a few hits and a lot of reshares.
It's a graph paper?
No, this one is the one I found from Corey Doctorow. I think shared it on Twitter. I happened to cross-post it over. But it says there ain't no party like a D&D party because a D&D party don't stop until the healer's dead and we've used up all our potions.
Yes, I saw that. I did. Awesome.
Number 3 on my die roll, RPG chat or ## RPG chat on Twitter. So I asked at Beef Griller. I don't remember his actual name on there, but that's his Twitter handle. He's usually running that. Justin Bergen, who's at D20Dad, got back to me. So every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, U.S., they have what's called RPG chat on Twitter. So you can just tune into that. You get your favorite, Twitter chat client, or if you just use Twitter itself, pound RPG chat. They'll usually have a topic. They'll talk about that for a little bit of time. It's kind of like a real-time instant message, but it's using Twitter. That's always really cool, and you can get to know a few people that are taking place in on that. And then number 4 on my die roll, downsizing. So I am currently one of my kind of things I've taken a look into in the last few months is tiny houses. And I probably won't move into one anytime soon simply because I don't know if it's – you got to have your spouse in on the same page if you want to do something as crazy as doing this. But if you haven't looked into it, tiny houses are really small. You're talking 100, 250 square feet. But it really kind of made me think about downsizing some of my stuff and getting rid of it. And so some of the things that falls into is some of my role-playing game stuff, which is things I don't play, things I haven't played, things I probably won't play. And so I'm putting some of that stuff on eBay and Craigslist and G+ to hopes of shrinking my actual bookshelf. And actually it's pretty – I don't know. It's you do kind of have a weight that's been lifted. I mean, for me personally, because I don't need all those books, and they just, as a matter of fact, they probably make me kind of more depressed just because I know I've got all these books and all these games I just haven't played, and it sucks.
Oh, books never make me depressed. I sit in my little home office here where I've got my Mac, and I did this last night because my wife was gone for the weekend. Put the kids to bed. I sat down, read half a book, looked around the rest of it. I thought, yeah, I need more. I'm sick that way.
Yeah,
Can't
I'm
help
sure
it.
that I'm probably not the norm. I'm not the. Most gamers love their books and hard.
You're just not a sick bibliophile like I am. It's okay. It's okay not to be me in this regard. I'll let you have that.
Yeah, and then maybe I'll regret some of it. I don't know. Who knows? So those
Cool.
are my 4 die rolls for this week. What do you got, Brett?
Let me see. I got a couple. Nothing too drastic. One of the things that I bought off iTunes a while back to watch with my youngest boy. He's 8. AJ. He likes to play. He loves it when I pull out my Hero Quest board game, Dungeon, any of a Talisman. He loves Talisman because it goes on for freaking ever, of course, and that means he gets to play board games with Daddy longer. So that's awesome. But I bought the second Dungeons and Dragons movie, Wrath of the Dragon God. It is abysmally bad, of course, right? It's not good. However,
I have to say I've never seen either D&D movie.
That's okay. I think I think you're okay. I lost sanity after I watched both of them. But the second one is now at this point I've seen it enough times with AJ that I can like get through it. But an interesting part is that I look at that and I'm like, you know what? This is the type of adventure that I used to run when I was a kid. When I was AJ's age, 8 and early teens, late high school, this type of questing silliness and whatnot, this is exactly what I got off on at that time. So I'm like, you know what, I could totally mine this entire plot line, and my kids would be like, oh my God, this is the best story ever. So that was kind of fun. So I guess if nothing else, when you see that stuff, and if you've got kids, if you've got young people at all that are like interested in this stuff and they aren't really discerning as far as movie tastes go, I mean, seriously, throw this stuff at them because it's fun. And he saw it and he's like, wow, I really want to play Dungeons and Dragons. He just really wanted to do it because he said, I could do this. Yeah, you could totally he sees my minis. He sees this stuff. He's like, I have friends at school that would like this too. I'm like, bring them on over, kid. I got plenty of graph paper to go around. We can totally make this work.
That's probably a good thing because some of that stuff does not age well.
Yeah, that's very true. Some of it doesn't age well at all.
The youngsters may have just a much better appreciation than we do now.
Yeah. I mean, the other one he loves is Hawk the Slayer. I bought that off iTunes a while back. I don't know if anybody out there remembers Hawk the Slayer, but God, that's so bad. It's awesome. I just love it. The other one is, I think, totally non-gaming related, but this next coming weekend here, if the weather's decent, we've got a big homecoming thing for my kids at their high school this Saturday, but I'm thinking Sunday is motorcycle riding time. So, Sean, if we're able to, we got to get out on Sunday because it may be in a beautiful, soon-to-be snowy Wisconsin. This may be one of the last weekends we get. So I think I'm going to try to organize something for Sunday. I'm pretty it won't be long, and I'll put the stable in the engine. It'll be gone. I'll just look at it, longingly in the garage. So I'm pretty trying to figure out a decent ride, get an all-dayer in on Sunday if we can.
Oh, that'd be nice. I'll have to see him
swing.
Yeah, it should be free. I don't even think I have anything on the calendar. I went Saturday, and it was a chilly one, but I got the liner and the leather coat, and I was fine. Yeah.
I still got to get you some gloves. I can't believe you ride without gloves. Crazy, man.
I had snow gloves on this Saturday. So I'm like feeling like these big, huge club claws are trying to work the clutch and brake. And it worked fine, and it'll certainly do the trick when it gets even colder. But yeah, I'm kind of I don't know where I lost my leather. I lost a set of leather gloves I've got. I don't know where they are.
I think, what did I have here? I lost my train of thought. Oh, the last piece I had was, I've got two other ones. The last one's I just wrapped up an Amber game with my group, and after that game, and the reason, this is a total segue back to everything we just talked about, but one of the things that happened, and there was two newer guys, Kevin and his boy Austin, and we got talking about things after the game, and they've been with us long enough, they start talking like, you know what, I really wish we could do more of this type of thing. They started talking about what they want out of the game and so forth, because we'd wrapped up kind of early that evening. We spent 3 hours drinking beer, BSing, drinking coffee, eating crappy food, and stayed up way too late, but just talked for like 3-4 hours about what we wanted out of the next game. Didn't care where it was set or where it was, the type of characters, the type of action that they wanted to get into. It was just awesome. It was one of those weird moments that nobody planned it. We didn't say, hey, we're going to get here and talk about the stuff beforehand. It's sort of what we wanted. It just naturally occurred, and that was pretty cool.
So did you decide on something or what?
Yeah, we're going to do I'm going to do my Avalon Fantasy World, and we're going to use the Osric system this time through. The guys really wanted to get away from Pathfinder. They are feeling very burned out on, much like we talked about earlier, the die rolls for everything. They just wanted something a little more narrative, but they love the D&D combat stuff. And the Osric system was a hell of a lot of fun when I ran them through White Plume Mountain earlier this year, so they wanted to go back to that. They thought that'd be fun.
So you're going to start them out at first?
Oh, yeah. That way it's harder.
Wizard with 2 hit points?
I think I might be gracious to let them have like a full, top end of the die roll for hit points, maybe.
Oh, magic user with 4 hit points.
4 hit points. Yeah, plus a con bonus, baby, if you get it.
You're not going to have a con.
No, you're not. You're not going to have a con bonus. That's just a pretend bone I throw them. The other piece is that I'm a hunter, so this weekend was the opener for bow season here in Wisconsin. Wasn't able to get out, which sucked, but that's okay because my wife was gone, which was the reason I couldn't get out. But I was just time with the kids, which was really, really cool. And I've got 5, and there's 4 left in the house. The oldest one's off of college, so the older ones are off doing their thing because they're teenagers now and way too cool for me, and I'm fine with that. But the 2 little ones want to do this. They came up with this thing. They wanted to do a book club. So my little home office area got turned into, it was like just full of pillows and stuffed animals and piles of kids' books that they drug in. And my youngest one she's 6, and if there's anything the 8-year-old can read, she can read. So she pulls down Neil Gaiman's The Graveyard Book, and she starts reading through that. She thinks that's awesome. And then they found my Calvin Hobbes collection stuff. They were reading that stuff out loud and just howling all night long. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun. So I guess coming back to it is just really cool to share that stuff with my kids. That was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Yeah. Yay.
So I think that wraps it up for another episode. It's our first episode.
It's the first.
Of Gaming and BS. I'm Sean.
And I'm Brett. Good night, all.